Where's the Bump? From Fox News Podcast, I'm Dana Perino.
Then I'm Chris Stirewalt.
And this is Perino and Stirewalt. I'll tell you what.
That's a very astute question. It's quite good.
Oh, okay. Well, where is the bump?
Well, the bump, of course, is in the eye of the beholder. And currently, Republicans are wishing so hard. They're clicking the heels of the ruby slippers for the bump. Democrats are afraid that the Republicans might be right. But what I love about right now, of course, how would you possibly know? There is no data on which to base this. So currently we are in the feelings phase. The worst sins of media bias are in omission, right? It's not, very seldom do you get something like what CBS News did to George W. Bush, where there is an invention, right? Where there is actual fakery. Usually the way bias works is that people just omit things that hurt their preferred narrative. And they just leave that stuff out and focus on the things that are good for their narrative. That is a much more powerful, and it often happens unknowingly by the perpetrators. So right now, Republicans are in a phase where they only want to hear the good news. Things are good. It's getting better. And I was talking to a Republican strategist this week, and he said, look, all the polls are moving the right way. I said, there are no polls. He said, yeah, but if there were, they would be moving the right way.
And so why is that? Like, why is there no data?
You can't poll during a convention. There was basically one swing state poll that was conducted. Franklin and Marshall College did their Pennsylvania poll last week. I would never advise polling during a convention week or other big upheavals. You want things to settle in. So if you think about it this way, if you poll during the Republican convention, you're going to get an artificially high reading for Republicans because, number one, they're more likely to be staying at home watching TV and able to reach by phone. And what they're seeing on TV is telling them how great it is to be a Republican. And the same would work for Democrats. So you kind of want to let that stuff go through. Now, it's not that there's no data. And I do want to talk a little bit about betting markets because I know that's an area of big interest to people. But do you remember me bitterly caviling in 2016 about the Los Angeles Times USC School of Government poll?
Yeah.
And I wish to offer a mea culpa. So it's not a poll. And that's what I was focused on in 2016. It's not a poll in the way that what we do are polls. It's not a snapshot of public opinion at a given moment. But it is useful. And what it's useful for is tracking people over a period of time. So what they've done, they've got 6,000 participants. They're talking to something like, I forget what it breaks down to, but like 350 people a day of the same group. And they keep coming back to them. So you check in. If you're one of these 6,000 people, you check in every other week. And that gives them a rolling average, but it also gives them every 2 weeks, they do a whole what their average for the 2 weeks is. It's not a poll, but it does show movement. And what they showed during the conventions was that there was movement for Trump, but that it has eroded and that it's back to where
quickly.
That it's back. Well, but that's what those sugar highs do, right? You're like, yeah. Oh no. I think for Republicans, their job is to get their voters fired up, and getting your voters fired up involves issues and involves talking to them about things they care about. But it also is like, we can win this. So obviously, I don't expect Republicans to say, well, we're still down 10 points nationally, but you never know. Good things could happen.
I see. Gosh, there's a lot I want to ask you about. Let me ask you about more of the sort of news of the day with President Trump going to Kenosha. And I realize that we're a weekly podcast, so news of the day doesn't necessarily fit, but I do.
Well, this will be the news of every day this week, I promise.
Yeah. And you do have some Democrats who were saying on background to as many reporters as they could, they were panicking that Joe Biden has to say something. He has to do something. He has to get out there. And then he did. He finally left, but he didn't go to Kenosha. He went to Southwest Pennsylvania.
Yeah, there's no
say anything to you about his concerns about Pennsylvania?
Well, I mean,
maybe not concerns, but
so Biden also said he might go to Minnesota. If he goes to Minnesota, that would speak more of concerns. We expect Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, North Carolina, Iowa, Ohio to never stop their suffering until a week after the election. That the misery will be compounded daily as each candidate pummels them with advertising. Though the Trump campaign took their advertising down again. I assume they're rebooting a new urban violence menace ad. But they're down this week. But that will not last because we have a new super PAC group with Chris LaCivita, the Swift Boat architect, probably the most. I mean, if you had to pick the one Republican dude, message guy, general consultant, chief cook and bottle washer, you'd pick LaCivita. So this is a Sheldon Adelson group, and others have pooled their money to put a big push behind this. And LaCivita is good. So that's good, very good news for Republicans. Trump is like me, and my friend gave me a beautiful loaf of bread. Beautiful, crusty, rustic, but still very soft on the inside white bread. Perfect white bread. Now, a normal person could eat some of the bread and say, oh, that was delicious, but not I. The bread is gone. I got it. It was the size of Wirt County, West Virginia. I received it on Friday. It is gone. And I had some help, but not much. Trump is that way with things that he thinks are helping him. So if we think back to why the Willie Horton ad was successful in 1988, George H.W. Bush was seen as a nice man, a good guy, who and his campaign ran this ad that was terrifying. And it targeted Michael Dukakis for being soft on crime at a time when crime rates were through the roof and Boston was a mess. And here was this great indictment of him. People said it was racist. People said it was whatever, but it was effective. And the Republicans didn't roll around in it like a dog in a dead deer. They put it out there and this, well, we certainly hope, we wish the, but no, we're certainly not. Now here is Trump. It's all they talk about now. And Trump is making a terrible mistake and flying to Kenosha. There's no excuse for the mayor doesn't want you, the county doesn't want you, the state doesn't want you, nobody wants you there. It is obviously inflammatory. We are in a phase in this election, we're acting like a third world country. We have protests and counter protests that have now turned deadly, where you have vigilantes on both sides killing each other. And two of the deaths were in Kenosha. The fact that the protesters and counter protesters are talking about Trump, to have Trump arrive cannot make it better. There's no way that Trump arriving can make it better. I understand he wants to make the police feel good and he wants to do that. And I'm sure that the White House will defend it to say that the president is there to support first responders. But obviously it's political and obviously it will make things worse.
Yeah, I'm anxious to see it. I was just watched as the president gave some remarks before he left. He mentioned something on Fox News air last night with Laura Ingraham about something that's under investigation about people that were on a plane. And then when they just asked him about it, like, I thought it was something that was like, maybe, you know how we have air marshals? Maybe an air marshal saw something, no. But instead he said, it sounds like it was a friend of his.
Or a Facebook post.
He said, it's somebody that you know. And I don't know if he'll be willing to talk to you or if he said they'll be willing to talk to you. So it could have been a woman, I guess. But, I mean, maybe it's happening. I don't know, but it just did seem a little bit like, wait, what?
So again, it's like, there's a good issue here that's good for Republicans, which is people are concerned about unrest in the cities and voters. And we saw this before the conventions, certainly in Wisconsin, voter attitudes towards Black Lives Matter as a movement are down, and people are souring on the rightful part of the movement as the unrest continues.
For the full podcast, go to foxnewspodcast.com.